He was a famous actor-comedian. He was declared dead almost 30 years ago.
Andy Kaufman was this crazy performance artist from the 70s.
Well, the word genius comes to mind, but I'll let you decide for yourself.
He would do these crazy wrestling shows, and then he'd also sing kids' songs.
Andy Kaufman's still alive, by the way.
30 years ago, Andy Kaufman supposedly died of lung cancer.
Andy Kaufman faked his own death as his ultimate last prank.
Hello, my name is Holly. I possibly found Andy Kaufman 35 years after he died. Andy grew up in a middle-class Jewish family in the suburb of Great Neck, Long Island. His career began doing magic tricks at children's birthday parties. That's him in the middle, right there. He grew up to become one of the most unique performers of the 21st century. People think of him as a comedian, but Andy described himself as a song and dance man. He said, "I'm not a comic, I've never told a joke. The comedian's promise is that he will go out there and make you laugh with him. My only promise is that I will try to entertain you as best I can."
Right now, I would like to do for you some imitations. So, first, I would like to imitate Archie Bunker. You stupid. Everybody's so stupid. You meathead, get out of my chair. You dingbat, go in the kitchen, make me the food. Everybody's so stupid. I don't like nobody so stupid. Thank you very much.
The fact that he only cared about being entertaining, that really spoke to me. He didn't care about being definable or even doing something that made sense. He would make the audience love him one moment and hate him the next. When I first began watching his old routines, I particularly enjoyed this one where he read his audience long sections of The Great Gatsby, sometimes standing on stage for over 5 hours to read the entire book.
Chapter 1. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since.
My obsession, for lack of a better word, with Andy began the semester before I graduated college. My prior obsession was drag. I was actually the director of my college's drag troupe. Like Andy, I loved art that blurred the line between reality and imagination.
Thank you very much.
And I was curious to see what it was like to purposefully make the audience dislike me. So, for my last drag show before I graduated, I modified The Great Gatsby routine and read my peers the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin.
We're left off at the age of 10 to help his father in making soap and candles. He persisted in showing such bookish inclination. All right, I'll thank you to keep it down, please, because, we got an awful long way to go. All right, well, what would you have me do? He persisted in showing such bookish inclination.
Weirdly enough, I loved getting booed. It was liberating. Better yet, it was fun. I felt like I had a new understanding of who Andy was, and I wanted to learn more. In 1983, Andy came down with pneumonia. A medical checkup found that he'd developed large cell carcinoma, cancer of the lungs. It had already spread to his throat. A tumor had caused pneumonia. He passed away a year later on May 16, 1984. He was 35 years old. In 2004, his former writing partner and best friend, Bob Zamuda, started telling anyone who would listen that Andy Kaufman had faked his own death.
So what he does, and it was brilliant, is he found a fan of his that was dying of cancer. And he worked out an arrangement with that fan and saying, look, help me with this, help me pull off this elaborate prank. And the guy did it. It was done with prosthetic makeup. So when the family sat around at Cedar and Sinai Hospital on May 16th, 1984, and that person died, they believed it was Andy Kaufman. No, it was a person who looked like Andy Kaufman that had died. So here we are.
I wouldn't blame you if you thought Samuda was making all this up. But he and Andy really did talk about faking his own death. Here's a recorded phone call made 4 years before he died.
Because I don't think I'd want to get killed, though. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't think that part. I wouldn't like that part. But we can fake it. Huh? When I'm more famous, we could fake it. Yeah. We could do stuff like that. Oh, of course. Yeah? Of course. We have a gravestone in the whole thing. And then you come back again. Just look at how you come back. This is a stupid format, like on the Dick Van Dyke Show or something. Yeah. The same thing, the original act. Yeah. And then when you really die, nobody will believe it. So they won't believe your own death. You'll be immortal. Go on forever. That's great.
It's not just Samuda who claims Andy is alive. There are Twitter pages and fan-made websites dedicated to Andy and tracking down his whereabouts. Pictures of him in Albuquerque popped up over 6 years ago.
I don't know if it's him or not, but that one black and white one where it shows his face, I think it looks like it could possibly be him.
I graduated from college in 2019. The first few months were rough. Plans fell through, friendships felt stale. I needed to relearn who I was. So, among other things, I turned to Andy. When he was my age, he began meditating under the instruction of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He quit smoking, drugs, and alcohol. That's part of what made his cancer diagnosis seem so strange to a lot of people. Andy would meditate for hours a day in the pursuit of his authentic self, the person we become when any pretense, anxiety, shyness, or ego are stripped away. Basically, the person we don't have to pretend to be. For me, I wasn't sure who that person was, but I began meditating like Andy in the pursuit of self-actualization. For Andy, the core of his authentic self was rooted in commitment, the idea that everything he did at 200%. That became the basis of his act. When he and Samuda created their routines, Andy would fully commit to them. He never gave away the joke, and of course, neither did Samuda. They never let the audience off the hook, and for the most part, that's what made Andy entertaining. But then he performed his last routine, and a lot of the laughter stopped. One day, Bob Samuda found Andy watching something on an 8mm player. It was a short film of two women wrestling. Not in a sexual way, just wrestling in JCPenney underpants. For most of his adult life, Andy had frequently associated with prostitutes. After the wrestling movie, Andy began regularly wrestling the hookers. That's when Andy and Bob got the idea to incorporate wrestling into the act. Andy knew he couldn't wrestle men. At least, he couldn't wrestle men and win. So, he decided that he would only wrestle women. He donned a persona that was pure villain, a sexist heel. He would say everything the women's lib movement stood against.
The wrestling here tonight unquestionably most exciting, but you do wrestling on your own, as a matter of fact, but generally with the ladies.
That's right. That's right. I just don't think that it's possible for a woman to beat a man in wrestling. And I think that even if a woman trains for a long time and, gets in shape and stuff, I just don't think that a woman has the physical capability of beating a man. I think that they're just capable of washing the dishes and the pots and pans, raising the babies. And so if there's any woman that wants to prove me wrong, I offer $500 to any woman anywhere that wants to wrestle me. I will pay $500 to any woman that can pin my shoulders to the mat.
I want to ask you real quick, if he had not done this death hoax, do you think maybe he would have stayed with professional wrestling? He seemed like he was really into that.
Yeah, he'd rather be a professional wrestler than anything. He loved it. When he was a little boy, his grandma he lived in Great Neck, and she would come to New York City. She didn't take him till like a Broadway musical. She took him to Madison Square Garden to see the wrestlers, and he loved it. So to him, that was always theatrics. And what was wrestling about? Very much about what? Faking out the public.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I never found this routine very funny, and neither did many other people. The wrestling routine was the beginning of the end of Andy's career. Not surprisingly, the sexist heel had a horrible impact on his popularity. Not a lot of people wanted to work with him anymore. He got a lot of hate mail. His first movie bombed, the sitcom he starred on got canceled, and a year later he got his cancer diagnosis. But did he regret it? I don't think so. Wrestling let him shed his Hollywood image, so at least he proved he wasn't a sellout. And as a form of entertainment, wrestling gave him everything he ever wanted: theatrics, drama, and an audience that never knew what he was going to do next. This was the culmination of his whole career. Andy and Zamuda only cared about one thing: faking out the public. So, when Andy told everyone he was dying, the rational thing was to believe he was playing another prank. If he really is alive, Andy's been in hiding for over 30 years. In 2014, Zamuda said that Andy was due back any day now.
Andy gave a time limit to this one. He said, if I was a little boy about it, it'd be a year or two. If I was going to be a man about it, it'd be 20 to 30 years. Well, 10 years ago was the 20th mark. I put on a big event at the House of Blues in L.A., thinking he was going to return then. We had that place was star-packed. He didn't show up. Now, because he said 20 or 30 years, it's 30 years. It's now or never, and he's coming back.
2014 came and went, and still no Andy. And, of course, maybe he is really gone. That said, I do think Zamuda genuinely believes that Andy is still out there. The thing is, if he's still out there, someone should be able to find him. I thought to myself, what if there was a chance, however small, that I could find Andy Kaufman? I was reading a transcript Zamuda had published, one of the last phone calls he had with Andy, and something caught my eye. Zany Clowney. That can't be a very common stage name. Well, I'm sure Zamuda has looked into every Zany Clowney on the face of the earth, but I thought maybe I could give a Google search a try. And I found only one Zany Clowney. And what I saw, I couldn't believe. This was no ordinary clown. Zany performs in Virginia. He does birthday parties and twists balloons into things, as any clown would do. But he wrestles.
Zany the Clown.
That's his full gig. He's a wrestling clown.
Main attraction.
Who else but Andy Kaufman would start his life over as a wrestling clown? I looked at the pictures. Surely I could recognize Andy's face, but all the pictures were zany in a full face of clown makeup. Just like Andy said, he disguised himself like Clarabelle from the Howdy Doody show. I looked at Zany's eyes. Did they look like Andy's? There was no way. But what if there was? I messaged him. At first, I was so embarrassed that I just said goodbye and completely accepted that I had done something very weird and, of course, had wasted a very nice clown's time. And then I read that conversation over and over, and I realized he never really denied it. There was never a, "No, I'm not Andy Kaufman, you crazy woman, go away." No, not that. But he didn't say yes. Zany has stayed in my mind as the Schrodinger's cat of Andy Kaufman, simultaneously definitely him and definitely not. So, until I see him without the makeup, I can't say for sure. I was always wondering how I was going to end this film, and the only real solution I came up with was when I asked myself, what would Andy do?
Okay, that's my show for tonight, and I hope you had a good time.
When Andy's shows came to a close, he always ended them with a sing-along to Friendly World.
Until we meet again, please remember, in this friendly, friendly world, with each day so full of joy, why should any heart be lonely?
A sweet ditty that's all about loving each other and being grateful for the time we have together. Andy ended his show singing it because that's how he wanted people to feel when they left. When they left, they had to go back to the real world, and I think Andy understood how difficult that was. Not everyone lives as their true selves. I think Andy may have been one of the few people who did. And I think what I've kind of learned from Andy is how to live in that world. He taught me how to create my own way of living, how to turn something odd and unique to me into something that captures a room full of people.
Arm around the person sitting next to you and sway back and forth in rhythm to the music. Okay, come on, everybody, come on, you at home. Come on, even if you don't like the person sitting next to you. Okay, come on. And now everybody sing, the world is such a wonderful place.
I don't know if he's really gone. Honestly, I don't really know much about him. I don't think anyone really did, except Zamuda. All I know is, I've set the anniversary of his death in my phone, and I'll be staying up past midnight to see what happens.
The sky so full of stars, and the river full of song, and the river so full of song. Every heart should be so thankful. Every heart should be so thankful. Thankful for this friendly, friendly world. Thankful for this friendly, friendly world. Okay, you want to sing it again? Okay, one more time. Come on, everybody. Oh, come on, I don't hear everybody. Oh, okay, we won't stop until everybody sings.